So a long time ago, I had this invention, and I thought that if you numbered the last 6 or 7 slides in reverse order in your PowerPoint presentation, that people would see there was an end in sight. And so they would be very pleased with the prospect. Having the timer face you is frightening. It's just completely frightening because it's like watching paint dry. You see your future in front of you. I'll try to be fast, but there's a lot to cover, and I also want to try and leave a couple of seconds for any questions that you may have. So the bad news is a tremendous amount of change is going on. The good news is it's happening so fast that whatever you were worried about yesterday, you don't have to worry about that. There'll be new things tomorrow, okay? So the one thing we know is that standing still is not going to do the job for us. And the other thing is there's actually some good news. It used to be that a lot of the economics of these businesses was about a choice, and you could do some of this stuff, but you couldn't do it all. Today, with the lower barriers to entry, with the diminishing cost of technology, with these huge populations that are available to us virtually for free, we can do a lot of things, and we don't have to make the kind of choices. We don't have to say, I'd like it to be great or I'd like it to be within budget. We can actually insist on all of this stuff, and we can measure it to an extent that we never could measure it before. And so we can demand new kinds of accountability. And frankly, when somebody says you got to give up this or you have to give up that, the answer should be no. That just means you haven't thought about it long enough. That just means we're not being creative enough to create the kinds of solutions that are available today, because believe me, they are. So I want to start talking just for a moment or two about virality and how it's changed. It used to pretty much be that word of mouth was an understandable process. It's what did people talk to other people about? How quickly did they do that? What was the sort of mean time between that? And we could expect a curve that eventually tapered off, and we had to be the next new cool thing in order to keep interest and to keep sort of momentum. But we also believe that there was sort of a point in time where we could take a breath because it wasn't a radical changing thing. Today, things are not really evolutionary, they're completely disrupted. And so the change that's amazing is that if the adoption curve is fast with respect to new apps, with respect to new products, with respect to virtually anything, the astonishing thing is how the abandonment curve is about 10 times the speed of that. And so we're seeing that one day things are fabulous and the next day it's over. Mark Zuckerberg has a great expression. People ask, how long are you going to be the future? And the truth is it's a moving target. And so all of this stuff is changing. Just to give you an idea with respect to Facebook in particular, in middle school, Facebook is actually losing to Tumblr. And this has a lot of explanations. The funny thing is, by the time they get back to high school, they're back on Facebook. And so we're seeing new technologies, we're seeing levels of disposability that are completely frightening. The Snapchat thing, you literally set a dial, and it says how many seconds you want this thing to exist. Seconds, And yet, 160 million daily snaps going on in an unbelievably short period of time. And that's just one of the things that's going on. These are two of the newest things that are out there. In terms of communication, and remember, these communications are not just your friends or just 5-year-olds. These are things that are driving everything: customers, vendors, clients, partners. And what's really amazing is these two have had the fastest ramps ever, and the reason for that is because they're cross-platform, and that's very significant. But to give you a measurement, right now, WhatsApp, 27 billion messages a day. These are numbers that it's almost impossible to get our head around, and yet that's what's going on. So I want to talk about a few things that are persistent themes. One is this idea of fast followers and iteration, this idea that whatever you bring to market, somebody will do it faster, cheaper, quicker, easily, almost overnight. Okay, so a lot of the things that we thought were traditional protections really aren't there to the extent that they used to be. Brand is one of these things. Brand is certainly still important in some respects. In fact, one of the most important aspects of brand is it helps us with something called decision fatigue. If we're presented with too many choices, we fall back on brand. That's one of the final and sort of, remaining values. But group pricing is another one of these things. This is the city of Groupon, okay? I'll tell you that basically today, though, speed is what's really astonishing and what's really the difference in terms of getting to market, staying in market, and constantly offering new solutions. I mentioned Groupon. Frankly, Groupon is sort of history. They're on their third life now. Now they want to be eBay Junior. I would tell you that Groupon is almost over, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And this idea that the crowd is everything is another thing that we're going to get over pretty quickly. Frankly, the crowd is crap. I mean, nobody really cares what 50 million people that you don't know care about anything. It's the people whose opinions you value. It's the people that you're in communication with. This is what's going on. Having said that, we're also moving into new ways of keeping score. So this idea of badges and the badgification and the gamification of everything on the web, it's going to grow. In fact, with respect, for example, to agencies and with respect to people who walk in the door and say, I'm a social media maven, I'm somebody who you should trust, increasingly the fact that they went to a 4-year college and studied marketing isn't going to mean anything. Okay? It's going to be a sort of a put up or shut up. It's not what you say you learned. It's going to turn out to be very much what can you do and how quickly can you show me what you can do. We're in a time now, and this has to do with in-store, this has to do with mobility, this has to do with a lot of messaging. The context in which you deliver your messages today is far more important than the content of the messages themselves. And that's a little frightening, but that tells you that proximity and relevance and location are key. And of course, in-store and all of the stuff that you're talking about is right in that sweet spot. We're in this bizarre period of time where we're actually manufacturing behavior. We're actually creating incentives for people to do things that are counterintuitive, and yet they do it every single day, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But in the context of this idea of delivering the messages where it matters, mobile is everything. And you'll see in a minute just how explosive the growth of mobile has been. And then lastly, and this is good news again for this group, location is the fourth dimension. Location is going to drive a great deal of the conversations, and places will tell us stories, and stories are how we learn and communicate everything. And so this idea of location-based communication is very crucial. I mentioned Groupon. We use Groupon every day, but we use it in a smart fashion, and the smart fashion for us is our summer camp. Frankly, at half the tuition, we'll take all the comers, okay? But what does that tell you if you're a restaurant who is about to be bankrupted by Groupon, okay? It tells you 4 things. It tells you, 1, that incremental revenues are what you need when you use a couponing program. You want newbies. You want to bring new people into the market. 2, if you're constrained by capacity or size, it's not for you. If you're going to drive out your existing good customers or things like that. 3, if there are huge upfront costs, if you have to cook and deliver a meal and then wait 60 days to get paid half of the value of that meal, it's probably a loser for most small businesses. And then lastly, you can't be in this business, in this couponing business, if you have cash flow issues. But if you design it right, it works. The problem simply is that one size doesn't fit all. One Groupon approach is not going to be right for many, many kinds of businesses. Having said that, however, to give you some idea what is going right for Groupon is frighteningly mobile, explosively mobile. And mobile is driving everything. It's not limited to Groupon. Every sector today is increasingly migrating. And frankly, if you don't have a strong mobile strategy and presence, you're going to be history in a much shorter period of time than I think we suspect. Obviously, computers and printers, but what we're seeing is that it's accelerating across all kinds of products and services. And so right now, about a third of everything that's going on is going on phones or on tablets. And this is everywhere. So clearly this is in store as well as everywhere else. The interesting thing, though, and this is something new, and if you haven't seen this, you should understand that the scarcest piece of real estate, the most powerful single presence that's out there today, is the screen of that phone. And the trick is, how do you become a persistent presence on that phone? Facebook is trying. They know there's a ton of people that would love to be able to just open their phone, which is to say look at their phone, and have their news feed be there. They know that it's precious real estate. But the problem is, in introducing a Facebook phone, it's stupid because there's really no reason why we need another phone or a different phone. What they should do is simply do what everybody with a brain does, and that is create an application. And this application exists. Right now, there's several companies, but the one that I like the most is called Locket. And what Locket does is supply an ad on your locked phone screen. So it's the first thing you see. And just to give you an idea, on average, how many times do you think we look at our phone during the day? Think about it. It's become so unconscious that very few people even have a clue. It's 150 times a day, okay? So it's a screen that's an advertising medium. It's a billboard. And here's how Locket works. It's really, really clever. If you don't care about the offer or the ad or anything else, you just swipe to the right and it disappears. But if you swipe to the left and engage, it may be an offer, it may be a video, it may be a coupon. And there's a whole set of incentives associated with that behavior. There's points, there's prizes, there's different things. So it's going to happen, and the reason it's going to happen is that everybody has figured out that the buttons on the screen occupy a very finite place. And if we're not a persistent button, if we're not the athletics button or the shopping button or the social button, then we're going to be buried a couple of screens down, and that's toast. That's something that nobody cares about. So think about that piece of real estate, because that's as important as any in-store presence that you're going to have, especially because we can now reach it and address it and geo-fence it and trigger it, even to the extent of it. I love this. We have technology now that permits us to project advertising into the common spaces of malls. You'll see this in a minute. So this is great because the landlords are forever saying, you can't advertise in that, middle space. And we're like, show us where it is. Anyway, you'll see it in a minute. So what's the migration mean? Well, a huge number of people on Facebook are now addressing it in a mobile fashion. LinkedIn is accelerating dramatically. E-commerce in total is doubling and tripling on an annual basis. And so I'm going to talk about, as you heard in my kind introduction, a couple of different things. First of all, we know so much about you demographically that that's old news. It doesn't matter. It's what are you interested in, because your interests drive intent and future behavior. And so we're going to talk about that. Talk about how high-velocity computing lets us know what consumers are going to do before they know it, and supply and change the sands right under their feet when we're in that mode. The goal is to figure out how to get away from tonnage, get away from the crowd, and focus on people who are highly influential, lifetime consumers, brand advocates, people that are important to you, not these bozos who would watch any cat video, okay? And connectivity, I mentioned before, we call it mobile and social combined, motional. This idea that that's where we have to be, that's the new playing field. What you see is everything. Nobody learns anything other than from video now. It's pretty frightening, but think of Christmas morning. Think of how many years you spent trying to read some pidgin English set of instructions, right? Is anybody going to read any instructions now? You're going to go to a website. It's going to show you a humorous, perfect, step-by-step way to do anything. That's how that's going to happen. And then lastly, the workplace has exploded. It's porous. It's no place, and it's every place. So the idea now is, if we're smart, there are ways we can access powerful resources and amazing tools anywhere, because time is the driver, it's not place. And all of these assets and all of these resources that were location constrained and place bound, that's over. We can reach them all now because of connectivity. So interest. Interest is, in this era of the Stanley Cup, interest is related to something that Wayne Gretzky used to say, and that is, He doesn't skate to where the puck is, he skates to where the puck is going to be. And so this is what Google collects. Every single time you do a search, 57 different criteria, Facebook collects roughly the same, okay? But here's the goal. Personal information, personal data about our preferences and our interests is really where we're headed. This is what Facebook collected in 2005, 2010, today. Okay, why? Because they figured out remarkably clever ways to incent us to share this information. And again, this isn't kids, this is everybody. And one of the most important sea changes was when Facebook started, they had a peculiar rule. They said you actually have to be somebody. You actually have to be who you are. And that changed the game because that meant that anonymity and links, which used to be the driver of the web, was gone. And it was now people, and it was now that kind of information. Now, there's a lot of bullshit still out there. There's a lot of, sort of Walter Mitty people who are armchair travelers and fantasy people. There are fake likes. There's whole industries that you can buy, tons of tweets. There are, Pinterest has pretty much been captured by a bunch of marketers. And here's the key with a lot of this stuff. As soon as consumers pick up the vibe that these aren't authentic, it's over. It's pretty much over, and they go somewhere else. And we'll talk about that in a minute. If you don't know this story, it's one of the great stories of all time. This father calls up Target and says, stop sending my daughter these pregnancy things. And they said, check with your daughter. But there are new tools that we're using that get to this intent thing because search is too slow. So Chango says, what are people looking for? Let's get in front of them based on what they're looking for, okay? So tracking their interests turns out to be more important than search results, okay? Search results is catch-up. That's what you were looking for before. What you're looking for tomorrow is what we're really interested in. And Facebook has done an amazing, amazing job with that little blue box that plays on our fundamental laziness, which is I want to re-enter all this crap or I want to click on the little box, okay? Not to mention that for more than 9 million businesses, it's eliminated the needs for authentication, the needs for all kinds of verification, the needs to maintain profiles and things like that. So it's pretty powerful. And to give you some idea of how powerful, about 1 billion pieces of content are floating through just the Open Graph system now on every single day. And it's created an amazing tool. It's created a crystal ball for Facebook. They can see what is happening across the world in terms of sharing and behavior and adoption. And so when they spend $1 billion on something like Instagram, in retrospect, and this is the third $1 billion purchase in the last year, but when they do that, in retrospect, it looks cheap. And it looks cheap because Instagram has now more daily active users than Twitter, and they spend about twice the amount of time on the site. So you're not getting simply volume, you're not simply getting eyeballs, you're getting engagement, a very, very powerful distinction. Instagram recently sort of tried to cut off the flow of its photo feeds to Twitter, so Twitter went right out and basically bought Aviary, which is another pretty smart photo filtering site. So we're starting to see that 2 or 3 major players are emerging in this area, and they're going to drive astonishing amounts of consumer behavior. And by the way, you're going to need to be there. This is the latest purchase by Google, Waze. Waze is crowdsourced traffic information. It's amazingly powerful, and it's something that is accelerating in an interesting fashion. But think about it. The crowd is so much more powerful and so much more capable of being real time and giving us this real kind of information. And this is going to be an astonishing tool for delivering advertisement that is local based, knows where the consumer is, and all these kinds of things as well. So now Facebook continues to move the needle. More and more verbs, more and more tools. My favorite is the want button. The want button is being tested by 7 or 8 companies now. Amazing results already. In terms of that, why wouldn't it be if somebody's going to raise their hand and say, here's exactly what I want? So L'Oreal, just to give you an idea, one of the prime advocates of this stuff, 400 people now creating social media, because if you don't fill the vacuum, If you're not driving the conversation, somebody else is. And it's as often as not, it's a negative conversation. So you need to be out there. Karma is a recent Facebook acquisition. It's a gift site. Why is a gift site so important? Mainly because it's bilateral. We now have a huge amount of information both about the recipient and the donor, and this is very powerful. And when you have 170 million people exchanging gifts and thousands of businesses already in that space, and this two-way flow of information, credit cards are next. And once there's credit card purchasing capability, Facebook will really be the market of choice. And when you see that e-commerce number in the teens, you can expect it to be in the 30s and 40s in about another year. So Graph Search is another tool. If you haven't tried Graph Search, I recommend it because it tells us something about how we learn. If you think about search, we need to sort of know what we're looking for. And so that's not really how we learn new things. It's great to be fed back, sort of a mirror of what we were looking for in the past. But discovery is new. And so if you want to see what your friends look like in 1962, you ask this tool that question and it finds you the photographs of all your friends from 1962. There's no way in the world you could have previously initiated that kind of an inquiry, but that's where a lot of this is headed. So photographs, profiles, all kinds of different information being accumulated in new ways. And Facebook will be announcing just shortly a couple of new products that sort of move the needle again. I mentioned Pinterest before. Interest data, very important. Counterfeit interest data, not so important. So bottom line, when you leave here, if you leave here with only one image in your mind, let it be this. Facebook and Google. Google, a powerful set of algorithms constructed by really smart engineers. Facebook, a much easier job. People raising their hands, people expressing their wants, their interests, all of that stuff. So think today of Google as a rearview mirror and Facebook as a sniper scope. Okay? And that's the degrees of precision. That's how advertising is shifting. And very frankly, people who spend a lot of time today on SEO and SEM and all this Google stuff don't get it. They don't get it, and they're going to be blown by the people who are using the new tools, the new technologies, and are playing in the right space. If you're not in the right space, it really doesn't matter what you're doing. Another big change is we used to believe that these guys on top, the social guys, were how we were going to reach our audiences. And that was the only game in town up to fairly recently. And so advertising drove commerce. It drove the spends that you make. Today, here's an interesting thing that has happened. There's now a return loop to this process. And the return loop is the card guys. It's Amazon, it's eBay, it's the credit card people. Because they can now, because of this personal information, they can now connect who you are and what you've seen to what you've done to actual commerce. And so the loop becomes very virtuous. It becomes a constantly accelerating loop. And this goes to this issue that brands should demand this kind of measurement, this kind of accountability. There's this great old guy named John Wanamaker who said, you know, half his advertising was wasted, he just didn't know which half, okay? Today, that's over. Today, you should be able to do this. Amazon today, by this kind of intelligence, is driving 30 or 35% of all their sales by anticipating and presenting to consumers these kinds of purchase opportunities based on interest data, based on personal information, and most importantly, based on purchase history. So, as the desire and the information grows, I want you to understand how we're changing the game. So this is what a store might have looked like not so long ago in terms of the availability of data. And it looks pretty stable. Your spends are pretty stable, every couple of big clumps, okay? But the kind of precision that's available now is pretty amazing. We can now look day by day. We can look at what is going on in the location at the time. And so we can see a much different picture, and we can be a lot more strategic and prudent about our spends when we know that promotions and trade things are driving these behaviors to a much larger extent than previously. Give you a couple of ideas on personalization. This is Ticketmaster, but this is Ticketmaster enabled by Facebook. And what does it mean? Well, it means everything. Where are my friends sitting? Which of my friends are going? You don't have to tell your parents, by the way. If you're going to the show, you can actually exclude it, limit it just to your friends. Although if your parents are your friends, you're fucked. Anyway, but you knew that anyway. Sorry. Anyway, but let me give you some idea of what's going on here. So Tyra Banks, we launched her new book. Swallow that and swallow hard, right? It seems like an oxymoron. These are FAMs. These are FAMs. She's that close. They're like family members. They're not just fans, all right? That would be trivial. So 3.3 million followers on Twitter. We launched a video from Tyra to all those folks. And guess what? Number 1 on Barnes & Noble, number 2 on Amazon, first week of launch. It's part of a trilogy, so be very afraid. But that gives you some idea what's going on. And it's going to drive everything. It's going to drive politics. Now, we can tell every single person exactly what they want to hear. Okay, so for the Obama campaign, not so long ago, we reached out to more than 5 million people who had not voted. We brought them information specifically from the friends they were active on. We focused on women and moms in certain geographic areas. And we were able to reinforce that to an astonishing extent. And here's a scary stat. Half of the people in this list didn't have landlines. Half of the people didn't have landlines. So all this stuff, all these ways that we used to conduct business are gone. And you double that up with peer pressure, so you award a Foursquare badge or a Facebook notification, and you have amazing power. And this is why brand advocacy and all of this stuff is going to be so important going forward in terms of what's happening. What's this? 80+%? It's the likelihood that Facebook can tell which 2 people out of the 170 million are going to change their status to dating, not dating generally, dating each other. Okay? This is what they tell us they can do. God knows what they can do. So Facebook Marketplace, to give you an idea, identity, proximity, what are my interests? What am I looking to buy? Give me a currency. It's game over, and it's just beginning. So right now, Walmart, who everybody sort of thinks is a little hidebound, okay? 8,500 individual pages. Every Walmart store in the country has its own, in the world actually, has its own page because all commerce is local. And so they're connecting on a personalized basis with their audiences. Right now, there are about 170,000 stores on Facebook. They're adding about 2,000 now. This is the risk of doing anything for more than 10 minutes. So it's accelerating the number of stores on Facebook. Why? Pretty simply, you have to be where your customers are. And so this is an interesting FedEx page on Facebook. And it says, basically, you can arrange for your shipping right here. But even more importantly, there's no need to leave the site. Okay? And the bottom line, the message is if you're not where your customers and prospects are, you're nowhere today in this digital economy. So we're also seeing more and more people ask me all the time, well, what does this have to do with B2B rather than B2C? You can only begin to understand what's going on. So first of all, Facebook is actually ahead of LinkedIn in terms of job searches, in terms of employment relationships. All of these kinds of things. So it's becoming the go-to resource for a variety of things that we wouldn't ordinarily expect, and that's just going to continue. Why do we do this? Basically, and believe me, it's not just the kids, as I said, we do it because these are transactions. These are exchanges that we're prepared to do and to make, and we're prepared to give up various things. If you make my life easier, faster, more productive, save me money, save me time, because fundamentally we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to waste our time. We want to be where our friends and the people that are valuable to us are. We want to be connected. We get stuck. These things become habits. And we're focused on the lock-in, but the bottom line is always the dollars, okay? And what is important about engagement? It's important to understand just how valuable a customer is. People ask me all the time about conquest marketing. That's bullshit, you know. If you had to spend the money that is available today, acquiring new customers is a loser, okay? Because the idea is to increase the spend of the people that are already within the tent, okay? And so we're seeing more and more cases, Belly is a good example, of customer loyalty strategies that have to do with the back end. How do I hold these people? How do I realize the additional benefits and the heightened degree of profitability by virtue of retained customers? How do I increase the depth of their spend? I consult to banks from time to time, and they're always worried about the 4% of their customers that left. 3% of them died. They're not going anywhere, and they're not coming back anytime soon. So, what we tell them all the time, and the rest moved, by the way, but what we tell them all the time is slide up, spend the same money instead of this stupid research on, migration and defection, on deepening the commitment and the spend and the services with your existing customers. That's the way to play the game. We're making these trades every day. If you haven't had this or seen these ads, these are the big insurance companies saying, if you let me watch your driving for 30 days, I'll give you, unless you're a crazy lunatic, I'll give you a discount in your insurance. So we're trading different things, and everybody is offering this. This is the Kindle, okay? So Amazon figures it makes them about $20 to run ads on your Kindle. If you pay $20 on an annual basis to Amazon, they'll give you a Kindle with no ads. Okay, just a trade, just a transaction. But these are the kinds of things that are going on. All right, so that's number one. Number two, know before the consumer knows. Know before people have focused in on what's going on. The idea of leveraging the future. It's pretty powerful. And I'll show you how it works, okay? It's all driven by high-velocity computing. So you may have heard this story. Orbitz finally fessed up to the fact that basically they sent more expensive hotel ads to people coming in using a Mac than to people who were using a PC. Just a complete, assumption about affluence, okay? And that's just the beginning. If you go to the Safeway site, they have individual pricing. But here's the interesting thing. Individualized pricing every day, every minute, every consumer. And do they give me the best price on Charmin? No, I'm already a Charmin customer. They give the best price on Charmin to the Kleenex customer. Okay, they want to move that behavior. So we're seeing sites now, local offer network, the first time a consumer comes to the site, in the 30 milliseconds that it takes to load a page, they customize an offer for that consumer. All of this is based on the power and the connectivity that's going on. Facebook, of course, now tracking behavior off of Facebook. So when you go look at another site, when you come back to Facebook, lo and behold, there's a little reminder ad saying you didn't actually buy those shoes, okay? And that's just the beginning of all of these programs where Facebook has successfully built a system that's going to permit them to take a huge list and track and match the behavior within the Facebook world for major brands and major marketers. So this is an interesting new thing. One of the things they did that was so smart is they knew that nobody was going to trust them with their customer lists. So they've built a DMZ. You give them information, but it's anonymized. So is their information. But the twain does meet, and they can actually connect you with people who are your customers. So you now have the ability to have customized content, bid pricing on the fly, real-time decisions, completely individualized. And encryption permits that in a way that was just never obtainable before. You sort of had to trust your list to people. That's not the case anymore, and that's what's really powerful. We also are seeing now the ability to surveil the world, okay? And when we talk about Twitter and people think that it's trivial or it's short or whatever, you should understand these are conversations going on with everybody that matters to you. Employees, vendors, everybody that I mentioned before. Everything is a conversation, and it's a two-way conversation. It's not I broadcast and people receive. It's all kinds of conversations about everything. This is a site, I don't recommend it if you have a life. If you don't have a life, I recommend going to twiststory.com, because what this does is you put in a word and it starts to feed you all of the tweets in the world, 65 billion tweets a day, that use that word. And if you don't think that this is contagious and compelling, imagine if you put in your name or the name of your brand and you watch this thing happen. So it is worth a look, but just don't forget that you have a life. Okay, so another thing that's going on now is they're beginning to mine these data streams of Twitter conversations and know what you're talking about. If you're talking about Ben and Jerry's ice cream, in a tweet, you can count on there being a Ben and Jerry's advertisement in conjunction with that very quickly and very soon. And the amazing thing is they're actually able to do psychographic analysis, and it's highly, highly predictive, and it's just going to get more so. Social Crunch, I mentioned this before. This is amazing, okay? These guys have built a game, and it incentivizes you, if you're under, let's say, 25 and have no sense of what the word privacy means, to answer some really bizarre questions about your personal life, your personal behavior, and everything else. And the payoff is it goes out and looks at all your friends and gives you back a percentage answer on how your answer compared to your friends. Amazingly compelling. On average, 60-plus questions are answered by all the people participating in this. And here's what's critical for you guys. It's offline behavior that they're tracking. It's behavior that is not otherwise measurable, otherwise available, otherwise trackable. But now they have stats on amazing things. iPhone users get far more sex, as an example. Anyway, the other thing that's happening is the process of complaining has become fully and totally automated. And as you know, the old stats about, 4 people who love what's going on might say something, but 20 people will make it a sacred crusade to tell everybody they know that you're a dirtbag. You've got to be in the space. It's amazing how quickly a campaign can turn around or turn against you, and this is all part of this new environment where we don't control much of anything, and it's amazing the extent to which people don't understand this. But if you have the ability to watch these conversations, you understand how much at risk you are. And it's not just big data. I know you heard this morning about big data and things like that. It's really about smart data. It's about things that tell you about the social amplification of conversations. The standard in the hotel industry is 12 hours to respond to a complaint. The Ritz, which is the cream of the crop, 8 hours. Okay? We're seeing services come to market now that respond in 15 minutes. Okay, you think that's not going to be a game changer? Well, of course it is. It's going to move these standards in new ways because in 15 minutes, the conversation doesn't go anywhere else. In 12 hours, you can bet that it's a book on somebody's thing. These are new sites that permit us to measure what's going on Pinterest, on Instagram. And remember, virtually all these things are free. You just have to do the work. And I don't mean you, but I mean somebody in your organizations needs to get out there and see what kinds of tools are available. It's pretty astonishing. Pathful is a free service that tells you what's working and not working on your website. You think your agency is telling you the truth, you think your ISP is telling you the truth, or the designer. Here's a thing that lets you survey exactly the engagement, exactly what's working, exactly what pages no one in the world is even seeing, and it does it on a regular, inexpensive, very quick basis. Same thing here, clickstream analysis, that's sort of yesterday. This is heat analysis. So they're actually measuring hovering, they're actually measuring people who are sort of scanning things in addition to click-through stuff, and that's significant. You've probably seen this up in the corner. This is a little thing that says, if you watch the video, that's great, but if you want to move away from it, you can do that. Now here's the difference that's pretty amazing, okay? The difference is that you don't pay for the ad unless they watch it. And so that's pretty astonishing. So here's another different level of accountability. That's probably my phone. Sorry. Oh, J.B. Pritzker. I guess I'll have to wait. Anyway, so a level of saying it's not enough to say we pushed it out there. We want to know if people have actually engaged and are absorbing this kind of content. And frankly, if you do this right, if you figure out incentives and transactions and trade-offs and all of this stuff, you can reduce your advertising cost and make it far more effective. We can tell now in these conversations who likes us, who hates us and who's undecided. This is the Casey Stengel test of a great baseball manager. Keep the people who hate your guts away from the people who haven't made up their mind, okay? We can tell who the biggest talkers are in these conversations. We can tell what channel they're focusing on. Why would you spend against a channel where the conversations weren't going on? So that's all part of this process of things that are available now for us. New sites like Mention and Monitor let us have a dashboard for everything that's going on with respect to keywords in the Twitterverse, and it's very powerful. This is a new program that was just acquired by Twitter called Bluefin, and it tells you about simultaneous activity. So it tells you while someone is watching TV what else they're doing. And here's what we've learned. We've learned amazingly that these devices do not diminish consumption. They enhance it and they multiply it. So if you're seeing what's going on here, people who watch TV, but people who use other devices are sharing, they're shopping, they're seeking additional information, they're getting supplementary experiences, all of this. So the thought that any new technology challenges the old things, this is always the case, TV was going to kill radio, all this stuff. It seems like what we're getting is a multiplier effect that people are on 2 and 3 different screens simultaneously. This is a project we did for AT&T. When the iPhone was announced as being available as well on Verizon, AT&T was very concerned. We looked at a zillion tweets, and we found out pretty much who were inclined to stay with AT&T. These people must be brain dead. Who was going to move regardless if it was simply a string and 2 tin cans, and then who was on the fence. And guess what? Where would you spend your spend? Against the people who are on the fence. You can now tell that kind of information. You don't beat a dead horse, and you don't have to advertise other than some modest reinforcement for the people that are already in the tent. We can tell the moods of the country. We can tell all kinds of things. Movies, forget about the critics, okay? We can tell so much information about what's happening on Wednesday night on a movie that we can cut and change the spend by Friday morning, all right? Now, I'm going to tell you that within the next couple of years, there will be Twitter zones in the movies. Instead of telling people to turn it off, they'll just tell them where to sit because that word of mouth is so powerful. And now, could I have a quick survey, not the women, but any men over 50 years old? Could I just see? All right, good. Modest. I'm going to show you the most powerful new technology that we have for films. This tells you when to pee, okay? This tells you when in the movie it's a good time to run out. It tells you what's going on, okay? And then you can come back and you won't have really missed anything. So this is really powerful. This is very stuff, but only for us oldest guy. All right. Anyway, conversation. All right. Sadly, we're going to go back to niches. We're going to go back to curation. That's the good news. Mention, let me go back one slide. Mention is a new site for sort of intelligent conversations by the guys who started Twitter. Kumbaya is a site that's a curated tribe site. Tribes are really powerful because when people get behind a brand, they want to share, they want to have these conversations. But what's important is for brands to now recapture the conversations. And so sites like this let you be a gatekeeper again and do some editorial so you can control these conversations. But they look authentic, they look engaging, very, very significant. And we can actually create personas that drive behavior, because what you discover about these tribes is the behavior doesn't extend simply to the product. It actually has implications in all kinds of other activities that they do, and so it's very instructive with respect to where they're headed. What do they have in common? They live in a world of new devices that are just astonishing. We're all connected, and it's only going to get more so. We'll have another 5 billion people on the web by 2020. People are adopting smartphones far more rapidly than we ever anticipated. And not only is it the case, but these are providing real services. Okay, your phone is a very powerful thing. We know all of this about you. We also know, to a very significant extent, more about you from your phone than if you were sitting in front of a desktop. Now, ComScore has addressed this. Interesting. They have a system that looks at the keystrokes and says, if there's 3 potential users here, I've concluded this is the kid, this is the parent, this is mom, or this is dad. And I think it probably works. But the point is, the phone is a highly personalized marker. And we don't even call them phones anymore. We call them trackers, because if you look at this, this is a heat map based on phones being melded with census for Prague. Upper left hand is what's going on in Prague. Right hand is at night, and the bottom is tourists, okay, which we can tell. So when you think about locating a new store, when you think about sizing a crowd, when you think about any of these kinds of things, think about the fact that we're all tethered to GPS devices, we're all identifiable, we can now measure, track, and change things in amazingly new ways. This phone knows when you're looking at it. So when you're not looking at it, the screen turns off. Okay, it's even better than Santa Claus. This is shopping in Tokyo, but this is shopping in Chicago. You take your phone, you take some pictures, and Peapod delivers your groceries to your home that evening, okay? This is a button on your refrigerator, and when you press the button 30 minutes later, your favorite pizza is delivered. Very, very powerful, okay? Often hidden by various spouses and other members of the family. But I mentioned this before, instead of having the kids break down the doors when Nike has a new shoe, we can now project that new shoe on phones only if you're within Washington Park, only if you're at an athletic event. And so we can fence it, we can insert it in the malls right in front of your competitors' offerings, okay? And this is the world that we're dealing with, because these are the communications and these are the opportunities that these new technologies present. This is something you throw into the dryer, and when it stops spinning, it calls you and says your load is dry, probably. This is my favorite, though. So we've all moved, and we've all given our precious belongings to a group of ridiculously toothless guys and hoped that they showed up. This is a fake little package that you give to them as well, and as your load is going across the country, it sends to your phone updates on what's going on, okay? This lets you know when you've walked too far away from your keys. This lets you find anything. You put these stickers, these are beacons, you put them on, your phone finds the beacon, okay, so anything you want to tag. This tracks your luggage, okay, so you can see where your luggage is. This is all connectivity, okay, and what it's really about is this idea that what we need when we need it, okay, that's the goal. What do we need? When do we need it? Wherever we are, without asking. Passive, available, new kinds of information that are going to drive behavior to a remarkable extent. Content alone is not a strategy success. You've got to get it out there to the people, and then you've got to measure it, and you've got to make sure that you're reinforcing the smart spends and killing the dogs, killing the stuff that isn't working for you and driving real results. You all know about this. You can find a sale at Starbucks. We call this, though, nudge or snack commerce, because it's taking into account personalization, proximity, and price. In store, if you don't know, showrooming. I mean, we think now of Best Buy as sort of a physical showroom for Amazon. But Best Buy has had to actually concede now that they'll honor any price guarantee. I mean, people are walking up, they're doing their shopping. It's frankly easier and cheaper still right now to buy the same good that you've sampled in store through one of the online delivery services. These things will tell you now where your friends are. They'll tell you who's attending a conference. They'll tell you what's going on at different locations. They'll let you on the fly create different kinds of social groups. And all of that is coming. And then we get to this issue I mentioned before of manufactured behavior. This idea that I used to say that if a business didn't save me time or money or make me more productive, it wasn't really a business. What we didn't know is that there is a new driver of behavior. And the driver is status. Okay? We knew status mattered. We didn't understand that you can now measure status, you can publish it, you can confer it on people, and it's changing the world. Okay? So even money maxes out, status is the gift that keeps giving, okay? And so it's going to be an incentive, it's going to be a program. Hopefully most of you know about Clout. This is one of a system of services that permit you to spend with the right people. Okay, why would you give sort of goodie bags to a random collection of people if you can figure out exactly who the people are with the big megaphones, exactly who the people are that are having the conversations that matter, and then spend against them. So the higher your clout score, the more money you save on this kind of stuff. And ultimately, to a brand advertiser, it's not even their relative score, it's how engaged they are, because the multiplier effect of somebody who authentically supports your story is astonishing. You may or may not know the McDonald's story. The McDonald's story was one of a hashtag gone, critically wrong, but the better story is Coke. Coke discovered that on Facebook, 2 kids were running the Coke site, and when it got to be about 7 million likes on the Coke site, those kids called up Coke and said, would you please take it over? It's turned into a whole life. And Coke said, no, we don't, because then it would be Coke's site. It wouldn't be authentic, it wouldn't be sort of, self-generating, and now it's 60 million, likes or something. But the interesting thing was that engaged market, that engaged audience was more powerful than anything they could do to influence it themselves. Cred is another one, just like Clout, it's based abroad. These track influence, these track different things. Again, a lot of these things deal with rewards, badges, help to engage and sort of encourage people in different ways. It's not about money. It turns out that after a certain point, the best sales force in the world is not going to go overboard. But if you want to beat the guy sitting at the desk next to you, you're going to make that extra effort. So part of this also is FOMO, which is this amazing impression on the part of consumers that whatever is happening, something better is happening somewhere else. Okay, this is the dilemma of reading the New York Times. It's like, holy cow, I can't be in 11 places at one time. But what we're really seeing is that people get busy. When you are presented with a site that says you're number 99 on your list of friends, you do whatever the action is to stop that behavior. And so that's very significant. In fact, even to the extent with respect to fitness competition, it's pretty clear that the drivers of taking care of ourselves are only relatively important. The drivers of competing with our friends and being as fit or running more or walking more steps or all of these Fitbit kinds of things are exploding in terms of improving fitness. I want to talk just a second about games. Games are not for grown-ups, okay? It's amazing that they skew to stay-at-home moms and to a very affluent population. This is a really sad fact. The Farmville economy is far more impressive than the real agricultural economy of this country. But all the brands are moving into these places, and here's why. Here's what we've learned from games, and this is, again, very crucial. We've learned about users that basically each and every time they encounter a social game, they want to be in control. They want to talk about how much they're going to invest in terms of time, how much they're going to commit in terms of money, and what the value is to them. And every time they do it, they want to do it on the fly. So nothing is going to be fixed. No media, no products. And this is actually helpful because instead of having to guess one sweet spot for a product offering, you can now say, look, if you're a modest user, if you're a lunatic, I have different pricing across a continuum that permits you to address a much larger population than just the guy that thought $59.99 was a bargain. Okay? So that's where we're headed. We're headed to this personalized, particularized, individualized pricing, and it's going to drive everything. And then video. It's exploding. This is hours. It's about 100 million or something like that, hours. It's insane. You're seeing more and more of these short-form videos. So Vine is actually pretty astonishing in terms of its growth. It's a 15-second video that's being used by all kinds of celebrities and things. But the most amazing thing is that Dropcam, which I venture to say most of you have no clue as to what that is more video is coming up from Dropcam now, which is an on-the-fly webcasting service that you just plug into your computer, and it lets you go to a dedicated, secure website and see whatever that camera is recording. It's pretty astonishing. And it's $150 or something like that. And so you can use it for point of sale observation. You could use it for all kinds of things. When you talk about event marketing or engagement or things like that, you can now watch what's going on in store for $150. Everything else is basically free. The connectivity is free, the streaming is free, all this stuff. So we're seeing sites like Keek and like Tout, and all of these are short form video, but this is how people are going to talk about brands now. And so the important thing is, again, to understand that when people want to talk about your brand, the GoPro camera is the best example. I mean, it's astonishing. And we're going to see more and more opportunities for what we call video-enabled commerce. These sites are ridiculous. They have millions of paying subscribers. This lady on the end, once a week for $5 a month, shows you a new way to decorate your nails, okay? Now, it used to be that these weren't businesses, but with the populations in the hundreds of millions spread all over the world, they can get 2 billion views or 2.3 billion views. These are astonishing numbers, and they're making for real businesses. And all of these things are going to be, as I said before, video enabled. So we're going to see how to do things. And then lastly, we come to this issue that I mentioned before about work, okay? And it's all about the idea that we can now use the internet and use connectivity, not to just do Wikipedia, but to do wiki work. And what that means is that we can recapture trillions of hours of productive labor that is stuck in places, that is stuck in situations that they cannot get to the workplace, but they're powerful resources. And so we're seeing more and more of these sites. I just want to show you as an example. Well, let me go back to this one. This is called 1 hour translation. And their claim is that in 1 hour they'll translate anything in any language for a ridiculously modest amount of money. But here's what's really going on. 40% or more of the workforce is going to be working for themselves by 2020. We're going to see more and more sites like TaskRabbit, which lets you farm out any task. But look at who the TaskRabbits are, okay? So they're young female professionals, they're college students, they're retirees, and they're stay-at-home moms. These are smart people. These are PhDs. These are people who, if they could work when they were in their downtime, if they could work when they were commuting, if they could work in fits and starts, all of these are resources that are going to change the way work looks. And it's all going to be also video enabled. If you haven't seen Mechanical Turk, one of the biggest challenges we have today is telling what's in photographs. So Mechanical Turk, you send them 20,000 photographs, you say, I'll pay 2 cents per photograph, and 2 days later, 20,000 answers come back telling you what's in those photographs, okay? This is astonishing, but this is how these systems work. So ChoreMart or 99 Designs, this is a good way to keep a lot of people honest, is to farm out these projects and see what comes back. This lets you talk to experts, the best data scientists, the best experts on starting businesses. They're all available. They're all available by the minute for advice on the fly. And then lastly, this is something that was just announced last week at NeoCon. It turns out that a whole lot of people in video conferences don't know who the hell they're talking to and who's in the room. So this does facial recognition and tells you who the people are sitting around the table, okay? Based, of course, on personalization, based on this kind of stuff. Lastly, final thought, 2-minute drill, okay? Don't let this stuff take over your life or your business. Start small and grow, but you have to do it. Focus on what you know about. Track everything, measure everything, and find people who actually want to do this. Because if you have people who are just phoning it in and who aren't authentic and who don't love these conversations, they're not going to be successful, okay? So they have to have fun. It's not something that is your only business. It's an add-on. It's an additional tool, but it's absolutely critical to every single business in the world. Thank you.